Can I interest you in racism? Well, this is a story about a weird kid crying racism and trying to get OP banned. Roll post. The game started out with all of the PCs existing in the forest village for some reason or another, and everybody dying or being captured except for us. Immediate red flags are, DM lets close friend play an actual giant Hexblade Warlock, and no matter what, he never failed. I would roll an 18 to knock a door down with my 18 in strength, and fail, while the Hexblade would roll an 11 and succeed. Jay was forced to change his backstory, and the DM would constantly change rules. For background, my character had been a slave to the Drow, which made him a bit distrusting all his life, and recently escaped to this island where we had seen a lot of Yuan Ti try and kill us. There was even a joke with Jay that had sprung up where I would say how horrible Yuan Ti are and how they shouldn't exist, and Jay would agree. I was blind and didn't know he was a Yuan Ti, plus he didn't like them either. The actual problem began around session 3, and up to this point every Yuan Ti that we had seen had tried to kill us, including some pretending to be captured and then attacking us when we set them free. We realized some captured townsfolk, and among them is a tied-up Yuan Ti. Ben immediately tries to untie him, and I warn him to be careful, and I keep my sword drawn. The player looks at me in shock and asks why I'm worried about the Yuan Ti. I say, I've met 20 of them on this island, and 20 have attempted to kill me. Forgive me if I don't immediately trust the 21st. This was apparently bad and not what Ben wanted to hear. The session ended shortly after. The next day, the DM messages me and says that the group thought I was being racist. I immediately apologize, saying that it was not my intent, and go to the group chat we had and apologize there as well, asking what the problem was so I can fix it in the future. It turns out no one else in the group had a problem with my character, and in fact enjoyed the character flaw as something my character could work towards bettering themselves at, which was the whole point. This actually raises an interesting question. Is it a problem to have intelligent life be inherently and irredeemably evil? From a creative and realistic perspective, it's sometimes seen as boring or lazy. Why deny intelligent creatures a reason to be hostile? But from a gaming perspective, having an all-evil race to kill indiscriminately and without consequence is just more fun. Take orcs, for example. Everybody's going to have a different answer, and it largely depends on their GM style. GMs that strive for deep lore and roleplay are more likely to be unsatisfied with evil just for evil's sake, while GMs that prefer campaigning and combat are more likely to need a filler group that can be the enemies. Roll post. Session 4, I continued playing my character how I wanted, and halfway through that session, Ben got pissed with me and started calling me a racist piece of shit and how either the DM was gonna kick me or Ben would leave. The rest of the group was shocked, being that DM had known Ben since middle school and I had just met them. I was forced to leave the table. Jay left with me. Me and him have been good friends for 2 years now. We both dropped the DM and Ben like a sack of bricks and never looked back. Since then, me and Jay alternate DMing so that we both get to play, and everyone in that game is basically family to me. So happy ending after all. This is a slightly stale discourse, but a while back people were talking and debating over whether or not it can be racially problematic to have a race as developed and intelligent as humans be evil, when in fact the entire discourse was doomed from the start, because you need to ask yourself what evil is in D&D, which means you have to take the deeply flawed alignment system as the be-all end-all of objective morality in D&D. But the biggest thing that defeats the alignment system is the alignment system. Take lawful good. The PHB states that lawful good creatures can be counted on to do the right thing as expected by society. What if the right thing as expected by society is considered evil everywhere else? What if the thing expected by society would be human sacrifice or torture? What about lawful evil? What if society is cruel and unjust and believes that the poor deserve to be poor? Is somebody in that society who donates to the poor doing a lawful evil act? I'm not even going to talk about chaotic good and evil. They take morality in their own hands, so according to themselves, they're all probably chaotic good. So, to the racism discourse, I think it's dumb to label anything as good or evil if there's no objective framework for that discussion. You can see that they tried to lay down some objectivity, but it's ultimately self-defeating. But not quite as self-defeating as the guy who ruined his campaign, ended a 13-year friendship, and tore his family apart over D&D. Roll post. My husband and I started playing D&D about 2 years ago and instantly fell in love. We knew that our siblings would love it too. And so a little over a year ago, we started a game of our own, with my husband as the DM. We invited my brother and his girlfriend, my husband's sister, my sister-in-law, and an old friend of mine who I'll call Kyle. Kyle is someone I've known for a long time. We met when we were around 14, meaning that at this point we've known each other half our lives. Our parents were good friends for a long time, and so he kind of became a part of my life. He was sort of a friend, but also regularly drove me crazy and made me mad, and I always sort of felt like he was family that I was stuck with. There were times when we were great friends and I loved hanging out with him, and there were times that I could not stand him. Anyways, right around the time that we were forming our group, he was going through a nasty divorce, and I felt bad for him, so I invited him to join us. After about a month and a half, he started flirting with my sister-in-law, and she clearly reciprocated. This was in late October when he was trying to sell the house he had bought with his wife, not ex-wife yet, they were still waiting to sell the house before pursuing the divorce. By November, my sister-in-law was helping him move and had a key to his apartment, and by January they were officially dating. Fast forward most of the year until late November 2021. Over the year, our little game grew to a big one with a massive 9 players. We had been working our way through Tomb of Annihilation for months and finally made it to the end. Hooray! While we were in the tomb, Kyle got the Book of Vile Darkness, which frustrated me because a lot of the detrimental effects that came with the book affected all of us. The worst one being that it makes all nearby potions useless. Kyle is both a massive rules lawyer and a terrible metagamer. For a month and a half, anytime someone tried to use a potion, he asked them, "Where did you keep it?" and "How close are you to me?" because heaven forbid he missed any chance to mess with the party. After we made it out of the tomb, we came across some Yuan Ti who wanted to take us back to their leader to complete a side quest. We were supposed to find a crown for them, which we did. They said that there would be a reward and a feast waiting for us. Immediately, Kyle started saying that he didn't want to go. He didn't give any explanation or reason for it, even when we asked him, repeatedly. A lot of the players have a tendency to just sit and wait for something to happen, which they were. So I put it up to a vote. Going back for the reward won by far. So we did, with still not a word from Kyle as to why he didn't want to. When we got there, we were taken into a room full of chests of gold. The Yuan Ti asked for the crown. Kyle responded, "I don't know where it is." I looked at him funny and said, "You had it. Where did it go?" He just kept saying, I don't know where it is. No explanation, nothing. Someone asked if he lost it. I don't know where it is. The Yuan Ti threatened to kill us all. I don't know where it is. My sister-in-law talked them into letting us go, but by that point it had been over an hour of him first refusing to go, then refusing to tell us what was going on with no explanation, and I was frustrated. I asked if I could punch him, in-game of course, I play a monk, and he just walked away, and since the DM wasn't a fan of PvP, I was not able to. Finally, all our characters ended up outside. I asked Kyle again where the crown was. He said, "I was the one who had it, and I was the one who had to sacrifice to get it." To get it, he gave up a copy of a book that he had 2 of, one of which came from me. You were useless, so I don't have to tell you anything about what I decide to do with my own stuff. Ooh, oh no, terrible mindset. Not only declaring a quest item your own property, but then getting rid of it is a huge no-no. My guess is he went behind the scenes with the DM and probably sold it. Best guess. I'm all for freedom as a DM and player, But there's a reason you can't dispose of quest items in video games. It's because they don't belong to you. It belongs to the party and the story. If I were the DM and I already made the mistake of letting that guy ruin the quest, I would apologize, retcon it, and move forward. It's an easy mistake to make and there is no reason to beat yourself up over it. But of course, it's never that simple. Roll post. I saw red at that. I wanted to scream and cry, but instead I just left the room. Most of the players, including Kyle, were online, but there were 2 in the room with me and the DM. They played for a bit longer, and when they were wrapping up, I came back and told my sister-in-law that I wanted to divide up all of the money and items that she had been holding for the group as a shared adventurers fund, since we were clearly no longer working together or sharing items and information. She realized I was upset and later texted me to make excuses for him. He really didn't know where it was because without talking to any of us, or the DM, he decided it was too evil and made it undetectable for the next 1,000 years. Which made it even worse. Of course, he did far worse than selling it. He made it undetectable for 1,000 years? I'm not entirely sure what spell that is, but that's besides the point. If he got rid of it, it could have been a redeemable quest. But no, this is just boring and sad. At this point, I think it's important to mention that the DM realizes he messed up in the situation. He's still new to DMing, and with such a large group, he has a tendency to get a little bit overwhelmed and tune out things while focusing on something else. Oh, well, that's understandable. During this time, another character was being mildly uncooperative. This player can be problematic that way too, but to a much lesser extent. And the DM was dealing with in-game consequences of that. And one of the other players was trying to steal some of the gold that we were supposed to get as a reward, so the DM was dealing with that. I believe there was a third thing in the middle of that as well. He wasn't aware of how long this conflict had stretched on for or how difficult Kyle was being. Here we see the party beginning to unravel. After the crown incident, it seems that few of the players are really taking the game seriously anymore. Everybody's just doing whatever small petty thing they can get away with. This is a sure sign of the game collapsing in on itself, and few games break free from this downwards momentum. Mostly because many people are already too mentally checked out to care anymore. We'll see how this ends. He also didn't pay a lot of attention to a text Kyle sent him saying the name of the spell he had used on the crown. He didn't send any explanation, and it was just a spell that he would have gotten with the level up after leaving the tomb. And that would have been extremely noticeable to the rest of us when he was casting it. The DM completely missed checking it out because of everything else going on. Since this, my husband has been working on his DMing skills, and as a group we're working on being more careful to only have one thing happening at once to help him out. At first, my husband didn't understand what was going on or why I was so angry. He asked Kyle to come over for the next day to talk things out with me, but Kyle refused. I sent Kyle a text explaining why I was upset and that I understood he was speaking in character, but I thought he went too far. His response really put things into context for me. First, he told me that I shouldn't be upset because it's just a game. Then, he listed a bunch of reasons about why he should be upset with me. Finally, he wrapped the whole thing up by accusing me of messing up his relationships and saying that next time I should act like an adult and just talk to him, which was literally exactly what I was doing. Here's the thing. His response didn't just make me mad, it reminded me of something. I overheard one of his last arguments with his ex-wife when I was helping him clean up his house to sell. He argued with her the exact same way. And suddenly, I realized just how toxic this man is and why he's frustrated me and made me angry so many times over the years. He's an abuser who had been manipulating and gaslighting me for years. I told him that I wasn't going to let him talk to me like that, and he literally cropped a text my husband had sent him so that it looked like my husband agreed with him and sent it to me. Oh, this is just disgusting behavior on Kyle's part. I get being a bad D&D player. I do. Especially if you're new. You don't know how to play the game for yourself, let alone your friends. But not only being a bad faith arguer, but trying to manipulate other uninvolved people's words to gaslight someone and make them feel insecure genuinely makes me mad. People like Kyle only care about themselves. Cut them out of your life like the tumor they are. But, and I do not say this lightly, he gets worse. Roll post. I sat down with my husband in the DM and explained to him what happened, and he realized just how much of the fight between me and Kyle he had missed, and finally understood why I was so upset. We compared the messages we had both gotten from Kyle and realized he was actually trying to pit us against each other. Kyle's last text to my husband said that he was going to take a break from D&D until I figured myself out. Well, unfortunately for him, I did. Kyle and I met up at Starbucks and I told him he was no longer welcome to play with us and that while I recognize that he's probably going to be family, this has been a pattern in our lives and I'm not willing to be a friend to him anymore. That conversation was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. Partly because we do have such a long history and have honestly been friends at times. And partly because even while I was telling him that I wouldn't be manipulated anymore, he was trying to manipulate me into thinking that I was wrong and that he didn't say anything that I thought he did. I went home crying. And then my father-in-law, husband's dad, got involved, called my husband, and told him not to stand up for me or express his support for me. I won't go into detail on that situation, but it is ongoing and has pretty significantly damaged our relationship with him. My sister-in-law and Kyle just got engaged before Christmas, and while I'm glad that she's happy, I'm terrified for her. My husband and I tried to keep her out of the conflict, but of course Kyle dragged her into it. At one point, she repeated an argument word for word to my husband that Kyle used to use against his ex-wife all of the time. Kyle is a very logical person, and his ex-wife, or in this case, I, am very emotional, and so he can't see the emotional side of the problem, and we can't see the logical one. Seeing that, and even writing it out now, makes me sick. Involving otherwise uninvolved third parties in personal squabbles is way below the belt. But when it's family, it's even worse. Especially when you're marrying one of them. Between manipulating your perceptions of other people, argumentatively battering you into an emotional state, and then claiming the logical high ground, as evidenced by his argument style and logical facade, and his refusal to play by any rules besides his own, he will be a terrible romantic partner. My guess is the marriage won't last. They'll have a hell of a honeymoon period, but after the reality sets in, she's going to have to put up with the person who taught her all of her manipulative argument tactics. And she's going to have to deal with it. It's sad at best and dangerous at worst, as I am certain that Kyle will manipulate his wife's perception of her family in an attempt to isolate. He already tried breaking a couple up, but the story isn't quite finished yet. Let's go. So, to sum it all up, a problem player decided not to cooperate in or out of game, tried to tell me that I had no right to be upset with him, made me realize that I've spent 13 years letting him manipulate and abuse me, and seriously mess up my relationship with my husband's family. All because I felt sorry for him and let him play D&D with us. End post. This has been an emotional roller coaster. This video goes out to anyone who has ever been in an abusive relationship or has known anyone who is in one but just won't leave. If you want to see more horror stories, I have a library of content for you in these funny boxes. Till next time.